Today I finished reading Journey to the Edge of Life by Tezer Özlü. I believe I'm saying that correctly. A little piece of lore about me. I was trying to teach myself Turkish for a while when I was in high school, and I was still working on it a little bit. I think freshman year of college. The idea was I was going to be an English teacher in Turkey. I think it was the idea of that job came before I picked the language. Actually, it was like I when I was in high school, I decided that I wanted to be a teacher of English as a foreign language in another country. And I like Googled what are the best countries to do that in terms of like the balance of relatively safe, but also relatively low cost of living and like decent wages compared to the cost of living for an English teacher. And it was like Turkey and the Czech Republic, which is now called Czechia. Those were the top two. So I bought myself a Turkish textbook and a Czech textbook. But anyways, that's completely beside the point. Um, this book is sort of a memoir, or I've also seen it described as autofiction, which is a term I was not familiar with before reading this book. Um, excuse me. Uh, but yeah, so autofiction, I guess, is like sort of fictionalized memoir or fictionalized autobiography, or like a memoir or autobiography that's kind of presented in the form of a novel, just in terms of the style of it. Um, so that's what this is. This is in the style of a novel, but it's a real thing that the author did. This is about the author going on a trip across Central Europe and Southern Europe, visiting the birthplaces and the death sites of three of her favorite authors, Franz Kafka, Italo Svevo, and Cesare Pavese. Um, I had heard of Kafka. I've read a little bit of Kafka. I had not heard of Svevo or Pavese, and I do want to read some of them after reading this. The way that she talks about them, sorry, somebody just bit me. The way that she talks about them was very compelling. Um, so that's cool. Always love to get book recommendations from a book or from an author. Um, kind of follow that chain of like your favorite favorite authors. Um, so that aspect of this was cool. But yeah, so this is it's somewhat stream of consciousness. It's mostly in the narrator's head. There's not a ton of dialogue, and to be honest, for the first third of it, this is or slightly less than a third. This is a 165-page book, and I think for the first like 50 pages, I was really not into it, to be honest. I struggled with the style. I didn't find that it was flowing for me. I didn't feel myself being carried from one sentence to the next, as I normally like to be when a book is well written. But towards the middle of the book, and especially at the end, I was starting to I don't know, either I was starting to adjust to the style or maybe the style was just getting better. You definitely get the sense that the narrator's mood improves as the book goes on. The first chunk where she's starting out in Germany and then she's taking a train to Prague to see where Kafka grew up and then ultimately visit Kafka's grave. And during that part of the book, she's very depressed. Um, and she also has a really bad toothache, um, and some other medical ailments that are going on. And as the book goes on, her toothache goes away over the course of like I think probably like 2 or 3 weeks. This is a pretty like short chunk of time in her life that this covers. But her toothache goes away. Um, she starts to just feel better. She's definitely still depressed, but she's like managing it better. And her thoughts aren't like totally dark all the time the way that they are in the first chunk of the book where she's visiting Kafka's grave. Um, so I liked the Svevo chunk and the Pavese chunk a lot more than the Kafka chunk. And I think I liked the writing style better in those chunks. It's not just the general mood of things, it's the style of the prose. again, I don't know if I was getting used to it or if it was actually changing and getting better, but I enjoyed it more either way. So yeah, that first chunk, she starts out in Germany, and so an interesting thing about this book, it was first written in German because the author, she's from Turkey, but she was living in Germany at the time that this was written, and the book was originally written in German, and she's fluent in both German and Turkish, and I think she speaks a little bit of a couple other languages, but she wrote it in German, and then she not exactly translated her work, but kind of rewrote it and changed some things up in Turkish so that it could be published in Turkey. And then that Turkish version is what has been translated to English by Maureen Freely. So if you happen to find the German version, which is only available in German, the Turkish version is what gets translated. But if you can read in German, you could read the original German version. I do speak German pretty well, and I think I read German very well, so I might see if I can find that. Um, Although I don't know, I've been looking at some other German books, and it seems very expensive to get German books in the United States right now. Just looking at shipping costs and things, it's not good at the moment. So, but maybe someday I'll look at that and compare. Uh, where was I going? But yeah, so she starts in Germany. She goes to Prague in I think at the time was Czechoslovakia, and then when I was growing up, they were um, had separated, but one of them was called the Czech Republic, the other was Slovakia, and now Slovakia is still called Slovakia, but the Czech Republic is now called Czechia. But anyways, she goes to Prague. She visits Kafka's home and Kafka's grave, and yeah, I really struggled to get into that chunk, and I honestly struggled to follow it at times. She does this interesting thing that I'm not sure if I enjoyed, where she switches between um, first person and second person, but when she's talking in second person, it sounds like she's still almost telling a first person narrative, but she's talking to herself, like her past self or her future self or something. So that was interesting, but I don't know if I really liked it. And that kind of fades away as the book goes on. Um, and then yeah, so in after that, she takes a train down into the Balkans, and she's kind of going around there for a little bit, and then she ends up backtracking towards Trieste, which is a city that is part of Italy now and has been since 1947, I think. But for the first half of the 20th century, it was part of Yugoslavia. And so the culture there is kind of this interesting mix of Italian and Slovenian and Croatian. Um, and Austrian, because there was kind of an Austrian ruling class in the city when it was in the Austrian Empire, um, before Yugoslavia was a thing. Uh, so she goes there, which is where Italo Svevo is from. James Joyce also lived there for a while, and the two authors were close friends. So it does talk about Joyce a little bit in here if you're a Joyce head. Uh, but yeah, I started to really like the book during that section. And then from there she goes to Turin, which is uh, where, well, so Pavese is not from Turin. He's from a little village outside of Turin, which I forget the name of because it's a very long name. There's like three parts to it. Santo Stefano Belbo is the village that he's from. So she stays there for a couple days, and then she stays in Turin proper for a couple days, and she really doesn't like Turin. Um, and I think her assessment of Turin is colored by her obsession with Cesare Pavese's suicide. Um, and it's a good thing my channel's not monetized because this video wouldn't be. But she's obsessed with Cesare Pavese's suicide. He killed himself in a hotel in Hurin, and she has this idea that like the city itself contributed to his mental health, and she just feels that the architecture is very oppressive. She talks about how she feels like the location of the city within the surrounding landscape doesn't make sense. It feels unnatural. She like looks off into the countryside and she's like, that would be like over there seems like a better place for a city. Why did they put it here? It just feels so wrong. Um, oh, my computer's battery is running low, but I'm almost done. So yeah, I mean the that last chunk gets very dark, but at the end it seems like she there's an idea that maybe throughout this whole voyage she was thinking about also killing herself. But she has abandoned that idea, thankfully, uh, by the end. And yeah, so first third of the book was not a huge fan of. Second third, very big fan of. And then the final third uh, gets a little darker again, but I enjoyed it a lot. Um, yeah, and I will be reading hopefully some Italo Svevo and some Cesare Pavese soon. Uh, Neither one of them has all of their works available in English. Um, and I actually wonder if maybe there's more translated into German than there is translated into English, and maybe that's something I could look into, because I think Tezer Özlü read a lot of it in German first, because there was certainly more of those works in German than there were in Turkish, and she was fluent in German, uh, but she was obviously a native speaker of Turkish. But yeah, I liked this. Did not love the start of it, but overall I liked it a lot. Yeah, I think that's it. I gotta plug in my computer now.